December 20, 1943. 1,345 hours. The southern edge of Ortona, Italy. The air was cold, biting, and carried the scent of wet plaster and diesel fumes. A Sherman tank from the Three Rivers Regiment ground to a halt, its tracks chewing the rubble-strewn pavement of the Via Cavour. Crouched behind the tank's armored bulk, Private Jack Lonsdale of the Loyal Edmonton Regiment risked a glance. Ahead lay the Corso Vittorio Emanuele, the main street. It was utterly silent, deceptively clear. The narrow medieval street was flanked by tall 3- and 4-story stone houses, their windows like dark, empty sockets. For the past week, the 1st Canadian Infantry Division had fought its way across the Morrow River through a waterlogged hell of mud called the Gully, paying for every yard in blood. Now they had reached the town, which they had been told would be a simple advance to contact. But the men who held Ortona were not mere conscripts. They were the 1st Falser Division, the Green Devils, veterans of Crete and the Russian front of Sicily. They were masters of defense, and their commander, Major General Richard Heydrich, had issued a simple order: Ortona would be held to the last man for 3 weeks. They had prepared. The order came down the line: Eddies, move up. C Company left. D Company right. Stick with the tanks. The whistle shrieked. Lonsdale shoved his spear down, knuckles white on the wooden stock of his Lee Enfield rifle. 4. He and his section dashed from cover, boots skidding on loose stone, following their Sherman. The plan was simple, classic military doctrine: tanks provide covering fire, infantry clears the buildings. The plan lasted 12 seconds. The moment the lead Sherman's hull crossed the invisible line into the Corso, the world erupted. It was not a single gun. It was a symphony of coordinated destruction. From a 3rd-story window, the unmistakable, terrifying rip of an MG-42, Hitler's buzzsaw, opened up. 200 rounds per minute stitched a line across the pavement. The sound was so fast, not a pop-pop-pop, but a tearing rip across a canvas, each 5th round tracing a solid yellow line of death. Get down. Men dove for non-existent cover. Lonsdale pressed himself into a shallow doorway as bullets chipped the stone inches from his head. Another MG-42 opened from a Sanger, a fortified nest built from the rubble of a demolished building. Then a third from a parallel street, creating a perfect interlocking field of fire. The street was a killing zone. The Germans wanted them here. The lead Sherman gunner shuddered. A whoosh and metallic clank. A Panzerschreck rocket fired from a cellar window slammed into its side armor. It did not penetrate, but the crew was blinded. The tank commander shouted over the radio, but his words were lost as a concealed 75mm anti-tank gun, hidden deep inside a demolished cafe, fired. The shell struck the tank's turret ring. A flash of white-hot light, a gout of black smoke, and the escape hatch flew open. A crewman, uniform ablaze, tumbled out and was immediately cut down by machine gun fire. Move, move. Get off the street. Sergeant Bill Taggart roared, firing his Sten gun from the hip. But where? The Germans had been methodical, using demolitions to create tactical funnels. The houses on either side of the street had been leveled, forming massive piles of rubble that forced the Canadians down the main road directly into the guns. The buildings left standing were fortresses. Their doors wired, their windows sandbagged, and their cellars connected by tunnels. A mortar round, an 80mm granite Warfer, landed with a sickening crump in the middle of the street. Lonsdale saw 3 men from his platoon simply vanish, replaced by a red mist and scattered equipment. The Seaforth Highlanders of Canada attempted to flank, pushing up a narrow alleyway parallel to the Corso, only to be met by another horror, a bouncing Betty. The German mine was tripped. A click, a whir, and the device sprang waist-high before detonating, sending a spray of ball bearings through the narrow confines of the alley. The screams were harrowing. The advance was not just stalled, it was being annihilated. The street, soon to be nicknamed the Red Boulevard, was littered with the dead and dying. Medics braving the fire were shot down, white armbands on the fallen giving no quarter. By 1700 hours, as the cold December light faded, the forward companies of the Loyal Eddies and the Seaforths had been shattered. They had gained less than 3 blocks at the cost of over 60 men killed or wounded. They were pinned down, trapped in the very first buildings they had managed to seize. The tanks were pulling back, their armor no match for hidden anti-tank guns at point-blank range. The commanders at Division HQ were stunned. The frontal assault was suicide. Flanking was impossible. The Germans had turned every street into a trap. Major General Chris Oakes, commander of the 1st Canadian Division, faced a terrible reality. His men were stuck, bleeding to death at the gates of a medieval fortress defended by the elite troops of the Wehrmacht. That night, in a freezing candlelit command post just behind the line, maps were spread. The mood was grim. They could not go around, nor through the streets. The call went out to the Reserve Battalion, the Royal 202 Regiment, the Venus. They were Canada's proud French-speaking regiment, and among them was a man who had already stared down the Falser and survived, a man whose company had been decimated taking a single farmhouse, Casa Berardi, in the gully. He was exhausted, grieving his lost men, yet he was a fighter, seeing the problem not as an infantryman but as an engineer of aggression. If the street was the killing floor, they would refuse to walk on it. Captain Paul Try was brought forward. On December 23, 1943, a shell-damaged cellar 2 streets back from the Corso Vittorio Emanuele, the air frigid and smelling of sour wine from a shattered cask, housed a single hurricane lamp casting huge restless shadows on damp stone walls. Captain Paul Try, CO of C Company, Royal 22nd Regiment, leaned over a map, his face a grey mask of exhaustion, eyes burning holes in the candlelight. Around him were his van officers and a few weary, grim-faced NCOs from the Loyal Edmonton and Seaforth Highlander regiments, survivors of the previous day, the men who had watched their friends evaporate on the Red Boulevard. Regard. Triquet says, his voice a low rasp. He taps the neat parallel lines of the Corso. They are begging us to come this way. They want us on the street. It is a grinder, said deafily. It is madness. A silence thick with smoke and the rumble of distant artillery hangs in the cellar. So, Try continues, looking up from the map. We will not use the streets. A haggard C4TH sergeant, his face black with cordite, looks up. Meaning what, sir? We sprout wings. The flanks are sealed. Try turns from the map and places his hand flat against the cellar wall. The ancient thick stone wall that connects this house to the next. No, Sergeant. We will not go around. We will go through. He explains the concept. It is not complex, but it is unorthodox. It is brutal. The Falser have turned the streets into killing zones. They have fortified the ground floor doors and windows. They expect the Canadians to attack the strong points. They wait for us at the front door. Try says, his voice hardening. So we will come through the bedroom wall. They wait for us in the cellar. So we will come through the attic, he sketches the idea. The houses Ina are built in long contiguous blocks sharing party walls. They are medieval. Built of stone and plaster, but they are not bunkers. They are shells. We will breach this wall, he says, slapping the stone. We fight room by room, floor by floor. We clear this house and then we breach the next wall and the next. We will advance inside the buildings, not outside. He calls it mouse holing. The men in the cellar exchange glances. They are trading one hell for another. Instead of a H-100 Red Yard dash through machine gun fire, they are volunteering for a new kind of claustrophobic intimate warfare. Hand-to-H hand combat. In the dark and narrow hallways and smoke-filled kitchens against the best paratroopers in the German army. Engineers. Tree snaps looking at a young lieutenant. Explosives. Sir, we have beehive charges, 6-pounders, an ample 808 plastic explosive. The beehive is a conical charge designed to focus its blast. Ban, this is the plan. One platoon starts on the top floor. They cross the roofs from the buildings we already hold. They blast their way into the attics of the next house. They fight down. He points to another officer. Your platoon starts on the ground floor. You blast through the sidewall. You fight up. We trap them between two fires in their own fortress. The audacity of it is chilling. It is a vertical pincer attack, fought inside a single block of houses. 530 hours. The eastern edge of the Corso. Private Jang Robichaud of the Van Duce is terrified. He's part of the ground floor assault team. His job is to carry the beehive. He and his section are crammed into the ground floor Salado, the living room of a house the Eddies captured yesterday. The bodies of the previous owners are still huddled in the kitchen. Sergeant Marcel Lorbeau-Gore, a grim-faced veteran, checks the primer cord. Robichaud, you place the charge center of the wall. When the fuse is lit, you have 30 seconds. Do not be a hero. Get behind the chimney stack. Robichaud nods, his mouth dry. Through the sandbagged window, he can see the first weak gray light of dawn. Across the street, an MG-42 fires a short probing burst. Rip. Do it. Gorders. Robichaud scrambles forward, pressing the 6LB cone against the plaster. His hands are shaking so badly he can barely fix the adhesive. He sets the detonator, pulls the friction igniter. A sharp hiss. The green fuse spits sparks. Fuse lit. Fuse lit. He dives back, scrambling over furniture, pressing a small frame behind a thick stone chimney. The rest of the section crams into the hallway. Men open their mouths, plug their ears. The 30 seconds stretch into an eternity. The detonation is not a sound. It is a physical blow. The entire building lurches. A wave of immense pressure sucks the air from Robichaud's lungs and slams him against the wall. Plaster, brick dust, and pulverized wallpaper explode outward, filling the room with a choking, impenetrable cloud of white powder. Ollie! Ollie! Go! Go! Before the debris has even started to fall, Sergeant Gore is charging into the fog. His Sten gun leveled. Grenade, he roars, pulling the pin on a Mills bomb and lobbing it through the jagged man-sized hole. Crump, a muffled scream from the other side. Robichaud. Robichaud racks the bolt on his Lee Enfield and plunges through the breach. The air is unbreathable, thick with cordite and dust. The room on the other side is a shambles. The blast has killed one German in his chair. Another is staggering, his face a mask of blood. Raising his MP-40. Don Sten burps 3 times. Bub, the German, is thrown backward. Stairs. Clear the stairs. This is the new reality. A savage room-to-room battle. The Canadians burst into the hallway. A potato masher grenade, a steel hand granite, is thrown down from the second floor. It clatters on the tiles back. The explosion is sharp, sending shrapnel whistling down the hall. The Failer Jagger have reacted instantly. They are not surprised. They are professionals. Upstairs, top floor team. Where are you? Daniel shouts, knowing his voice won't carry. Simultaneously, 2 stories above them, a second Van Du section is enacting part 2 of Tria's plan. They have climbed to the roof of the captured house, shimmied across the frozen tiles, and reached the attic window of the German H-held building. They don't bother with the lock. A corporal smashes the glass with his rifle butt. Another tosses in a grenade. After the blast, they pour in, landing on trunks and old furniture. They are met by two paratroopers. The fight is immediate and primeval. A Canadian swings his rifle like a club. A German fires his pistol, the flash illuminating the attic like a strobe light. A paratrooper is bayonet. Clear. Move. Down. The corporal yells. The Germans are now trapped. Gon's team is fighting. It's way up the stairs using fire and movement in a space no wider than a closet. The attic team is fighting its way down. They meet on the second floor, landing in a hail of friendly fire before the frantic shouts of "Venu! Venu, stop the shooting!" The house is a wreck. The stairwell is slick with blood. 4 Germans are dead. 1 Canadian is dead. 3 wounded. It has taken them 40 minutes. They have advanced exactly 50 feet. Gon leans against a wall, coughing plaster dust. Engineers, get the beehive. Next wall. The battle for Ortona has changed. The street is silent. But inside the stone buildings, a new brutal war is just beginning. One wall at a time. The mouse hauling has begun. And as the day wears on, the Germans, masters of improvisation, began to adapt. They realize the threat isn't from the street. It's from the wall right next to them. 11:45 hours, December 27, 1943. The interior of the second captured house. The air is a gray fog of pulverized plaster. It coats the tongue, clogs the nostrils, and stings the eyes. Private Zhang Ji Robichaud is pressed against a wall, his shoulders touching Sergeant Gon's. They are in what was once a child's bedroom. A small wrought iron bed frame is overturned in the corner. They are listening. On the other side of this flowered wallpaper wall is the next house. And in that house, there is silence. It is a loud, terrifying silence. They know we are here, Gon whispers, his voice barely audible. They can smell us, Lenier. Robichaud murmurs, nodding to the engineer corporal, who is gently tamping a beehive charge against the stone. Every scrape of his trowel on the plaster sounds like a gunshot. They have learned the first breach was thunder. The second must be a whisper until the moment of the blast. The corporal finishes, he unspools the det cord. Backing away into the hallway. Pretman nods. He looks at his section, their faces pale and ghostly in the dust-filtered light from the blown-out window. Grenades first, then the Stens. Robichaud, you and Pellier, watch the stairs. They will try to come from above. Or below. They tense, plugging their ears. Daniel gives the signal. The corporal pulls the igniter, the hiss of the fuse, but it is drowned out by a sound from the other side of the wall. A frantic scraping, a muffled shout in German. Myerd. Gol screams. Back. Get. Back. They have a charge. Gage and Ladon. It is a countercharge. The false Sherm Jagger were listening to the corporal placing his explosive. They have placed their own larger charge against the same wall. The Canadians have no time to run. They dive, scrambling over each other, trying to get into the hallway. The wall doesn't just breach. It vaporizes. A blinding yellow-white flash. An unholy shock wave that is pure kinetic force. The floor heaves. The ceiling cracks open. Robichaud is lifted from his feet and slammed into the opposite wall. His helmet is torn from his head. His rifle ripped from his hands. The air pressure pops his ears, leaving him in a muffled, ringing void. The blast is catastrophic. The entire party wall is gone, replaced By a smoking, jagged more 3 times the size of their own intended mouse. Hole. The engineer who laid the charge is gone. 2 other men are buried under a pile of smoking masonry, and through the smoke before the ringing in Robichaud's ears has even faded. They come. They are not men. They are devils. They wear gas masks with round goggling eyes, making them look like insects. They are gray-green specters charging through the dust. The Venus are disoriented, blinded, and choking. The Failer Jagger are prepared. BUP, BUP, BUP. An MP40 opens up. Sergeant Gainan, already on one knee, fires his Sten gun from the hip. A wild, unaimed burst that cuts the first paratrooper in half. To me, oh Zam. Gon roars, his voice. A second paratrooper appears, and he is not carrying a rifle. He carries a Flamemanner 41, a long metal tube. He pulls the trigger. A torrent of liquid fire, a sticky burning jelly, erupts from the nozzle. It splashes across the ceiling and runs down the walls. A van caught in the spray shrieks. A high piercing sound that is barely human as his battle dress melts to his skin. The room is instantly illuminated by a horrific dancing orange light. The heat is unbearable, searing the lungs. This is the German counter punch. They have turned Tree's tactic against him. The mouse hole is now a two-way street, and the Germans are charging into the Canadian-held territory. Robichaud, his vision swimming, finds his rifle. He sees a gray-green uniform through the flames. He doesn't aim. He points and pulls the trigger. The 303 round hits the German, who stumbles but keeps coming. Robichaud fires again and again, working the bolt. In a sheer panic, the German finally drops. Grenade, Gon yells, pulling the pin on a Mills bomb and rolling it through the breach like a bowling ball. Cover. The explosion is followed by German screams. The attack is stalled. Pellier, the fire. Put out the fire. Gorders, yanking the burning man to the ground and trying to smother the flames with his own body. The fight descends into a medieval brawl. For 10 minutes, the 2 elite units battle back and forth through the wall in a space no larger than a living room, choked with smoke, fire, and the screams of the wounded. They fight with bayonets, with trench knives, with shovels. Finally, the Canadians, fueled by a desperate fury, push the Germans back. Gon himself stands in the breach, his Sten empty, screaming in French for them to come on. The remaining paratroopers retreat to the back of their own house. A ceasefire, unspoken, settles. Both sides are exhausted, terrified, and shocked. Robichaud leans against a charred wall, vomiting from the smoke and the smell of burning flesh. Gon slumps beside him, reloading a new magazine into his Sten with shaking hands. They learn. Gon breathes, coughing. My God, they learn fast. The battle has changed again. Now every breach is a potential trap. The Germans are no longer just defending. They are counterattacking through the walls, and they are booby-trapping everything as C Company, blooded but unbowed, finally clears the rest of the second house. They find the traps. A wire attached to a closet door linked to a grenade. A bouncing Betty S mine hidden under the floorboards of the main landing. But the most terrifying innovation is what they find in the next house. As they prepare for another breach, a corporal in the attic team signals for silence. Scrape. Scrape. Thud. A sound from the floor of the room below them. They're tunneling up, the corporal whispers, his eyes wide. with disbelief. The Germans are not just mouse hauling horizontally. They are now breaching vertically. They are cutting holes in the floors and ceilings, creating kill zones from above and below. Captain Try arrives at the smoldering breach. He sees the scorched walls, the bodies. He sees the new reality. His tactic worked. But the Germans have matched it. All Try says, his voice grim. If they wish to fight in 3 dimensions, so will we. He gives a new order. No room is to be entered. Period. Every wall, every floor, and every ceiling is now an enemy. The new tactic is even more brutal. They blow the mouse hole. They do not go through. Instead, they blow a second hole in the floor above. They drop grenades and phosphorus. They blow a third hole in the ceiling of the room below them, firing their Bren guns upward. They saturate the target house with explosives and lead before a single man sets foot inside. It is no longer a battle. It is an industrial room-by-room demolition. The town of Ortona is being systematically pulverized. Its houses turned into concrete dust from the inside out. The Falscher Jäger are forced to give ground, not to infantry, but to sheer, overwhelming, point-blank explosive power. The advance is measured in feet per hour. The cost in ammunition is staggering. The cost in human nerves is incalculable. December 22, 1943. 09:15 hours. A captured kitchen. 3 houses west of the Piazza Municipal. The Van Deuce have been fighting for 30 hours straight. The men are automatons. Their faces caked in a gray-white paste of sweat and plaster. Dust. Their uniforms are scorched. Their eyes are bloodshot. The process has become a grim assembly line ritual. Step 1, the engineers place the beehive. Step 2, everyone takes cover. Step 3, the blast, which now feels like a dull, familiar punch. Step 4, the saturation. A corporal leans over the breech and empties a full 30-round magazine from his Sten gun. A Bren gunner does the same. 2 grenades are thrown in. Step 5, the entry. Sergeant Gainan's section is next. They are stacked up in a narrow hallway, ready to breach the wall of a building that opens onto the main town square. This is the linchpin. The Germans know they're coming. Charges. Set, the engineer whispers, backing away. Gore nods. He looks at Private Robichaud. Jean Gay, Ewan Pellier. First in. Clear left. Robichaud just nods, his mind numb. He checks the bolt on his Lee Enfield, firing the hole, the hiss of the fuse, the men brace, the explosion. The cloud of dust, the immediate deafening rattle of the Bren gun firing into the void. Grenades, 2 mils. Bombs, 2 crumps. Eligon shoves Robichaud's back. Go. Robichaud scrambles over the rubble, his bayonet fixed, and plunges through the smoking hole. The room is empty. It's a large salumeria, a butcher shop. Slabs of marble are overturned. The air smells of dust and long spoiled meat. Pelletier, left. Robichaud yells. Moving right. The room is dark. The front windows completely sandbagged. It's clear. Sergeant Pellier calls out from the far corner. Looks like they've pulled back. Gore and the rest of the section pile in, fanning out. Check the back. Check the stairs. Be careful of. He stops. His blood runs cold. He doesn't hear a sound. He feels it. A low deep groan. Not from a man, but from the building itself. The stones are shifting. Jianggi. Gong whispers, his eyes darting to the ceiling. Do you hear that? From the cellar beneath their feet comes a new sound. A faint muffled hiss. The unmistakable sound of a long delay. Chemical fuse. The Fallschirmjäger had not retreated. They had lured them in. They had sacrificed this entire building. Trap. Don screams, his voice cracking. It's a trap. Get out. D-Horse chews lemon. D-Horse. Robichaud doesn't hesitate. He turns and dives head first back toward the mouse hole he just entered. He hears Pelletier cry out in confusion. He feels Gon's hand grab the back of his webbing and pull him. He is halfway through the hole when the world ends. The Germans had packed the cellar with hundreds of pounds of high explosives. It is not an explosion. It is an eruption. The entire four-story building lifts off its foundations. The marble floor heaves, throwing Pelletier and 3 other men against the ceiling. Then, with a sound like a mountain falling, the entire structure disintegrates. The roof, the floors, the massive stone walls, all pancake inward, one on top of the other, collapsing into the cellar. The blast wave propels Robichaud and Gon through the mouse hole, throwing them like dolls back into the house they just left. The mouse hole, their only escape, is instantly sealed by 1,000,000 tons of falling masonry. A colossal cloud of black and gray dust blots out the sun where a 4-story building stood. There is now a new 10 m high mountain of smoking rubble. Pelletier is gone. The rest of the entry team gone. Buried alive. Robichaud lies on the floor, deaf, blinded, and choking. His lungs are on fire. He can taste stone. Gore is beside him. His face a mask of blood from a dozen shrapnel cuts, screaming a name that makes no sound. The Fallschirmjäger have adapted again. They have turned the entire town into a booby trap. They are willing to destroy Ortona, one building at a time, taking 10 Canadians with everyone. Captain Paul Try arrives, his face black. He sees the new mountain of rubble. He sees Gagnon, a man he has known for years, sitting on the floor, weeping with rage and grief. They buried them. Gong chokes out. Sir, they just buried them. The mousehole tactic has hit a wall, a literal wall of its own making. The men are at their breaking point. They cannot go into the streets. And now, they cannot go through the buildings. They are trapped. Try stares at the wall of rubble. The dust still settling. His mind is working. The Germans are methodical. They are engineers of death. But they are predictable. They expect the Canadians to breach, enter, and die. Get me the 3 rivers, Treyes says. His voice dangerously quiet. A runner looks at him confused. Sir, the tanks, they can't. The streets get me a tank. Try commands. Now, 20 minutes later, a Sherman tank, its engine, a throaty rumble, clatters up the narrow back alley. Its 75 m gun leveled. It's Commander, a young lieutenant, leans down from the turret. Captain, you wanted to see me. We're drawing sniper fire just sitting here. Lieutenant, Trike says, pointing not at a German position, but at the wall of the next house, the one adjacent to the collapsed building. I want you to drive through that wall. The tanker blinks. Sir, you want me to drive through it? That is my order. Put your 75mm gun right through his living room. Create a new door. The tanker grins. This is new. Yes, sir. The Sherman roars. It reverses. 10 yards. Pivots and then lunges forward. Gunner, traverse right. Coax. Fire, keep their heads down. The tank's machine gun opens up, spraying the windows of the houses across the square. The Sherman does not slow. It hits the 14th century stone wall at 15 miles per hour. There is a sound of screeching metal and shattering history. The wall explodes inward. Stone, plaster, and furniture are thrown across the room. The tank lurches, its tracks biting, and pushes inside the ground floor of the house. Its cannon now aimed at the interior staircase. The German paratroopers waiting on the second floor with their machine guns aimed at the side wall, expecting another mouse hole, are stunned. They look down their own stairwell to see the coaxial machine gun of a 30-ton tank staring back at them. It opens fire. Vandus, go, go, go. Try roars. The van Deuce, their morale instantly electrified, pour in around the tank, using it as a moving shield inside the house. They charge up the stairs, throwing grenades, their stens blazing. The fight is over in 90 seconds. Try's tactic has evolved. It is no longer mouse hauling. It is a brutal combined arms indoor-outdoor war. The Canadians have breached the piazza. The Germans, for the first time, are in disarray. They have no answer for a Sherman tank driving through a kitchen. The battle for Ortona is not over. But Paultrike has just broken the stalemate, and the Green Devils are finally irrevocably on the defensive. December 23, 1943. 10 was ours. The edge of the Potsdam Municipal. The sound is impossible. It is a 75mm Pimid main battle cannon, firing inside a 19th century dining room. The concussion is a physical blow. A solid wall of pressure that shatters every remaining pane of glass for a block. Plaster dust rains down from the ceiling. Sergeant Daniel, his ears ringing, feels the pressure wave hit his chest like a mule kick. Even from the relative safety of the breach. Inside the building, the Sherman tank Bonaventure lurches back on its suspension from the recoil. The high explosive shell travels exactly 40 feet, crosses a hallway, and detonates against the interior stairwell. The entire staircase, stone, wood, and the MG-42 nest the Fallschirm Jäger had built into its landing ceases to exist. It becomes a cloud of splinters and vaporized concrete. Go, go, go up the stairs. Gore roars, his voice already. This is the new drill. The Tree K tactic evolved. Private Robichaud charges in, not through a small man-sized mouse hole, but through a gaping tank-sized cavity. He and his section stay low, using the tank's armored hull as a moving shield. The air is so thick with cordite and pulverized brick, he can't see the opposite wall. The tank's coaxial machine gun opens up. A long, deafening burst that chews the walls of the second floor landing. Stairs. Robichaud scrambles up the smoking rubble that was once the staircase. He reaches the landing. A wounded paratrooper, his face a mask of blood, raises his MP-40. Robichaud fires from the hip. The click of the empty bolt is simultaneous with the German pulling his trigger. Both men are out of ammunition. They stare at each other for a single frozen second of mutual primal terror. The German lunges, swinging his submachine gun like a club. Robichaud parries with his rifle and drives his bayonet forward. The fight is over. He doesn't have time to breathe. Pellier, room left. This is the hammer and the anvil. The tank is the hammer, smashing the German strong points. The infantry is the anvil, sealing the breach and catching the survivors. The Fallschirmjäger are trapped. Their tactic of turning every house into an interlocking fortress has been defeated. Because the Canadians are now bringing their own fortress with them. House by house, the Van Duce and the Three Rivers. Regiment advance. The process is one of industrial-scale demolition. The tank commander identifies the next house, reverses, gains speed, smashes through the wall. Fires the 75mm at the main stairwell, fires the cokes at the upper floors. The infantry pours in. The battle for the piazza, which the Germans had intended to be a week-long bloodbath, is over in 3 hours. The Green Devils are finally, truly in retreat. But they are not broken. They are the most resourceful soldiers in the world. And as they are forced back into the northern, even more ancient quarter of the town, they adapt again. If they cannot win above ground, they will fight from below. 18 hours. A cleared cellar 3 blocks north of the Pazza. Gone. Section is on rest. This is a cruel joke. Rest means they have 30 minutes in a secure cellar to drink lukewarm chlorine-tasting water and try to keep a single cigarette lit in the damp frigid air. The men are slumped against barrels. Their hands tremble. This is the 4th day of continuous room-to-room combat. They are not men anymore. They are ghosts haunted by the noise, the dust, and the smell of death. Rowish. Show is cleaning the bolt of his lean field for the 10th time. It's the only thing that keeps his mind focused and quiet. Gon hisses. The cellar is silent. No, not silent. Beneath there. Feet from the ancient stone floor. Tap. Scrape. Tap. The men freeze. They look at each other, their eyes wide and white in the lantern light. They're under us. A corporal whispers, his voice trembling. Ortina is built on a network of medieval drains, sewers, and forgotten citizens. The false Sherm, Jagger, masters of the terrain, have found them. Scrape. Thud. Thud. Get to the corners. Gong yells, kicking over a barrel. Get ready. He aims his Sten gun at the center of the floor. The tapping stops. A muffled hump. A small breaching. Charge. The stone floor in the center of the room bulges upward. A crack appears. A gray-gloved hand holding a potato masher grenade shoves through the gap and drops it. Grenade. Robichaud dives behind a pillar as the steel hand granite detonates. The blast is deafening in the confined space. Shrapnel screams off the stone. Before the smoke clears, the hole is kicked open from below. A Fom Jagger, his face blackened with cork, leaps up from the floor like a demon from a trapdoor. He fires his MP40. A wild burst that stitches the ceiling. Another follows him. Gon opens fire. The Sten's BUP is answered by the German brat. 2 Van Duce are hit, slumping to the ground, but the Canadians were ready. From 3 corners, the Lee infields and a Bren gun open up, pouring a cone of concentrated fire into the hole. The 2 Germans were shredded. A 3rd paratrooper attempted to climb out, was shot, and fell back into the tunnel. A scream of Hans echoed from below. Grenades down the shaft. Gore roared. Robichaud pulled the pin on 2 Mills bombs and rolled them into the darkness. The double crump was muffled, followed by a sickening, wet thud. The attack was over. Gong leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. His hand was bleeding. Medic, they were not safe. Nowhere was safe. The battlefield was no longer horizontal. It was not even vertical. It was total. Every wall, every floor, every ceiling, and now the very ground beneath their feet was hostile territory. the tactic had to evolve again. From this moment on, before entering any building, a venue section dropped grenades down every sewer grate. They cleared the cellars by rolling explosives under the doors before opening them. The war had become a subterranean nightmare. December 24, 1943. 0345 hours. The ruins of the Cathedral de Santa Mesu. The battle had raged for 5 days. The town was unrecognizable. It was a moonscape. The streets were gone, filled with 30 feet of rubble. The Canadians were not advancing down roads, they were climbing over mountains of their own making. Captain Paul Triquet's C Company had been in the spearhead for the entire fight. They were exhausted. They were holding a line in the ruins of the town's main cathedral. They had lost 14 men killed and 30 wounded in the last 48 hours. The company was at less than half strength. It was Christmas Eve. A freezing rain began to fall, hissing on the hot rubble. Robichaud crouched behind a shattered marble altar, trying to peer into the darkness. The Germans held a block of apartments just 50 yards away. They had been fighting for this single intersection for 8 hours. Then, from the darkness, a sound. It was not gunfire. It was a voice. A single clear German tenor still. Hilligan. A German soldier was singing Silent Night. The Venus looked at each other. They lowered their rifles. The German's voice was joined by others, a small ragged choir of paratroopers. Alice schlaften Zamv. Sergeant Gahn, a devout Catholic from Rimouski, slowly stood up. He was silhouetted against a burning building. "Don't shoot," he murmured. He cleared his throat. His own voice was rough, cracked with exhaustion and smoke. Nuit douce nuit. One by one, the French Canadians joined him. Tutum tutu. For 5 minutes, on a battlefield of unimaginable savagery, the two most elite units in the world serenaded each other across a 50-yard stretch of rubble. The music floated over the dead, a surreal, heartbreaking truce. When the song ended, there was only silence and the hiss of the rain. "Merry Christmas, Le Boche," Gahn whispered. He crouched back behind the altar. Reload. They would attack at dawn. He was right. At 0530 on Christmas Day, the Germans launched a vicious, desperate counterattack with flamethrowers. The battle for the cathedral became a new and personal kind of hell. But the Van Duce held. By the evening of December 26, the Germans were spent. Their commander, General Heydrich, knew his position was lost. His elite 1st Falser Division had been mauled, broken by the relentless, brutal ingenuity of the Canadians and their captain. The order was given to conduct a fighting withdrawal. On the morning of December 27, patrols from the Loyal Edmonton Regiment, the same men who had begun the assault, moved forward. They mouse-holed their way into the final blocks. They encountered only silence and traps. The Germans were gone. They had slipped away in the night. Captain Paul Triquet's company was pulled from the line. They were not victorious, they were survivors. They were ghosts who walked out of the smoking ruins of a town they had systematically and heroically destroyed. December 28, 1943. 1,100 hours. The Corso Vittorio Emanuele. It was over. Major General Chris V.S. walked down the main street, the Red Boulevard. He was not walking on pavement. He was walking on a street elevated by 10 feet of debris, rubble, and unrecovered dead. The buildings on either side were no longer buildings. They were hollowed skeletal husks. Their facades ripped away, revealing the intimate, pulverized cross-sections of family homes. A bed dangled precariously from a third-floor remnant. A child's tricycle twisted in a mass of rebar. The air smelled of death, damp plaster, and lime, which medical teams were now spreading. Ortona had been called Little Stalingrad. It was a fitting name. In the 8-day battle for this single small Adriatic town, the 1st Canadian Infantry Division suffered fully 375 casualties, a quarter of all Canadian losses in the entire 3-month Italian campaign. The Loyal Edmonton Regiment and the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada, who began the assault, had been effectively wiped out as fighting units. the Venus were shattered. The elite 1st Falser Division had also paid a terrible price. They too were broken, having obeyed their Führer's orders until the very last. The street fight they so expertly engineered became their own tomb. But something else emerged. A new form of urban warfare had been born from the rubble. Captain Paul Try, his face still caked with dust, eyes vacant from exhaustion that would never fully leave him, was informed by his battalion commander that, for his conspicuous bravery and outstanding leadership, not just for the mouse hauling in Ortona, but for the impossible stand his C Company made days earlier at Casabard, holding a farmhouse with a handful of men and a single tank against waves of German infantry and armor, he would be awarded the Victoria Cross. He was the first Canadian to earn the British Empire's highest award for valor in the Italian campaign. He did not celebrate. He thought of the men who were not there to share it. He thought of Sergeant Gone. He thought of Private Robichaud. He thought of Pelayer, buried under tons of stone. His tactic, born of desperation and a refusal to accept the Germans' rules of engagement, was studied. It was photographed. It was written into field manuals. The mouse hauling of Ortona, the brutal wall-by-wall, room-by-room demolition, the use of tanks as internal battering rams, became the new Allied doctrine for urban combat. The lessons, paid for in Canadian blood in this small Italian town, would be applied again in the streets of Caen, in the fight for Aachen, and in the final apocalyptic battle for Berlin. The battle for Ortona was a victory, but not a glorious one. It was a 20th century siege fought with 20th century tools in a 14th century town. It was a grinding, claustrophobic, utterly savage affair where the only way to win was to destroy everything. The men who fought here were not superhuman. They were civilians in uniform asked to do the impossible, led by a captain who refused to let them die on a street. They did it. They went through stone. They fought in attics and cellars. They fought the living and the dead. And they left behind a city of rubble and a legend forged in plaster, cordite, and fire.